Did you think I was above making tier videos? Well, you don't know me at all. Here, we're going to be ranking the tier 0 units. Units that can be recruited from any city, regardless of whether you have a military building or not. We're going to cover this for all races. I'm going to tell you about my ranking system. At the bottom, we have units that are so bad they should be punished, so they're going to eat poo. Above that, we have units that stink. They are poo. In the middle, we have units, I don't really care about their fecal matter in any direction, so we're going to call them not poo. Above that, we have units that are so good, they don't poo. At the very top, the cream of the crop, we have the golden poo. That's right. At the very top, we have the glorious golden poo. Anyways, these rankings are entirely based on my opinions playing on very hard battle difficulty. You may have other opinions. Feel free to voice them in the comments. But remember, these are opinions, not facts. Let's just have fun. Let's start with the High Elves. So here, first, we have the High Elf Spearmen. And it comes with a shield. It's got pretty high leadership. It does its job of holding the line very well. So I'm going to say that this unit doesn't poo. Next, we have the High Elf Archer. Incredible range, very high leadership, easily replaced, fairly cheap. These can last throughout an entire campaign when backed by the right heroes. These guys are the golden poo. Fantastic. Moving on to Lizardmen units, we've got the Skink Cohort. These guys should be punished for how bad they are. They eat poo. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the Skink Cohort with javelins are the same in every way, except for they also have missiles. They have shields to prevent a little bit of missile damage themselves. They have all the same stats. So we're going to put them right up here. Doesn't poo. They were pretty close to not poo, but I'm going to say doesn't poo because they are pretty fast. And that's a key thing here. If they were slower, they would move down to not poo. Right now, we're going to stick them in doesn't poo because they're fast enough to usually run away from things pretty quickly. Fire their javelins off and then run back to where they need to go. It works out pretty sweet. Moving on to the Dark Elves, we have the Dark Elf Spearmen, the Dread Spears. These guys are pretty similar to the High Elf Spears, but they don't have as much leadership. I'm going to just put them in the middle here, not poo. If they had higher leadership, they'd be able to hold the line a bit better, but they just can't stand up to a lot. You can fit them into your army, but they're not a top priority for me. Next, we have the Black Ark Corsairs with Handbows. Now, missiles are king in this game. These guys also can fire while moving. Some of the problem with that, though, is that they don't have that much speed. They don't have much armor piercing, unless you're with Lokir Felheart. But for most people, since these guys have short range, I'm going to say that they just are poo. With Lokir Felheart, I think they might move up to not poo or even doesn't poo. But for most people, I'm going to stick them in is poo because you can get your dark shards at tier 1, and then you always have your black arcs where you can recruit things on the go anyway. So these guys are much less necessary. Moving on to the Skaven, we have Skaven Slave Slingers. Missile units, always very good. One of the problems with these is their loose formation and very high model count. They are relatively good in battle compared to what auto-resolve thinks their power is, but they can be hard to place on a battlefield because they just take up so much space. I'm going to call them not poo. Next, we have the Skaven Slaves with spears. Low leadership, very unable to hold the line. I mean, they do their job, but frankly, they are poo. When you can get slingers instead, these guys, they're poo. In the same vein, we have the Skaven Slaves with swords. They have less melee defense than their spear counterparts, and they don't deal more damage, really. So we're going to call them eat poo. Yeah, they eat poo. They probably like it. Moving on to the Tomb Kings. We have our Skelly Boys with swords. Now with the Tomb Kings, because you're limited on options, you're going to have a lot of these units, regardless. But swords in general don't hold up as well as spears. And the Tomb Kings don't exactly have the best leadership, So I'm just going to say that these guys are not poo. They're fine. They do the job. They're free. We'll live with it. And honestly, I think the spears are very much in the same vein. I'm going to say they're not poo. They're not going to get an extra bonus for being spears because most of them are just going to die. Either way, doesn't matter. They're units that do their job. Next, we have Empire Spearmen. Now, these are different from the High Elf and Dark Elf spears because they don't have shields, so they have less missile resistance, which means that as a frontline unit, they're going to get wrecked pretty fast, and Empire leadership leaves a lot to be desired. So I'm going to call this one poo. They're a big old poop unit. Next, we have the Empire Archers. Now, as far as I know, these are the only unit that requires its own DLC for a tier 0 unit. You would need the Hunter and the Beast for that, Marcus Wolfhard. They're not bad. They have reasonable range. They're boosted by the Huntsman Lords, and missiles are king in this game, but they're not as good as some other things. So I think I'm going to say that they don't poo. They don't deserve the golden slot. Moving on, we have Dwarf Miners. Dwarves are supposed to be super hardy, able to stand up to any other unit. But miners can't do that. And the worst part is, they're supposed to be good against gates, but they don't even have the siege attacker bonus. Come on! So, you know what? You are poo. There you go. Next, we have Goblin Spear Boys. They do have shields, so they can hold the line a little bit, but greenskin leadership isn't that great. So let's put them up here in the not poo with the other basic spear units. Next, we have Goblin Archers. Tight formations, but super short range. They're pretty good in the early game, but I would never use these very long in the campaign. I think these guys, frankly, are right in the middle of not poo and doesn't poo. I think we can bump them up to doesn't poo because some people like them so much and they can get quite a few boosts. And since you can replace them so easily, just do whatever. You can replace these over and over, and if they die, it's no big deal. Next, we have the Skelly Boys with swords from the vampires. These guys are excellent, especially since you can get them 100% for free. They're not quite as good at holding the line as their spear counterparts, but they do a great job for what they are. I'm going to say these units don't poo. Next, we have the zombies. Mindless creatures that can swarm the enemy. They don't have shields, but they do have quite a bit of health for what they are. So for a giant blob unit, I think they do the trick. I'm going to say that this unit is not poo. Next, we have the Wood Elf Glade Guard. Great range, lots of boosts. These guys, like the High Elf counterparts, are going to be golden poo. You can go long into the campaign with these guys because you can get so many bonuses and your range is going to be amazing. Next, we have the Beastmen, and we have the Unger Raiders. Pretty short range, but they do have stock. So I think these are really excellent for setting up as many armies as you can. Since you do have these unit caps, these are amazing. This provides more balance of power for a lack of unit cap than many other units with caps can. So I'm going to say this unit doesn't poo. Now let's look at the other one though. The regular Ungers with spears. Low leadership, no shields to protect against missiles. They do have stock, but really, they can't do much. I'm going to say this unit eats poo. With a choice between these two, a spear or a bow, I'm always going to take the bow. Also with the Beastmen, we have the Chaos Warhounds. These are pretty good units situationally. I don't love them personally, but they can be used very effectively because they're super fast. I'm going to say this unit is not poo. I would prioritize bows, but I might throw a few Warhounds in there if I feel up to it. Now we move on to Norska. We have these spears. Like a lot of spear counterparts, they don't have shields. Low leadership, unable to defend against missiles. They're just not going to be as good as some other base units. So I'm going to say these guys eat poo. That's right, they eat poo. And then finally, the Norsken Marauders, basic ones with an axe and a shield. Because they have a shield, they can stand up to a little bit more. They're not intended to be your damage dealers, but they'll just stay in the fight longer while your damage dealers are doing what they need to do. But their leadership isn't exactly the best for holding the line, so I'm just gonna say that it is poo. I'm definitely not keeping these units very long. So there's my ranking of the tier 0 units. Which of these do you keep long into the campaign? Which of these do you never recruit? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for stopping by. Goodbye!